So I was just in the middle of mastering something for a self-produced band. This is really common these days. I get a lot of work like this where it's like, people are at home. Everyone's got like MacBook and Logic, and they've got great drum sample libraries. I mean, I've even made a drum sample library with room sound that I love, and everything sounds great. But to get this stuff across the finish line, a lot of times people will opt to use a professional mastering engineer like myself, or use Master.io, which is like the AI version of my brain. But in this case, I'm doing it by hand. And one thing that I find with these programmed drum sample libraries is that like getting them to sit exactly in the mix can be tough. So this is a super, super easy trick where we're going to use a really, really fast attack on a compressor, a specific compressor with a really low ratio. But I just kind of want to show the difference you can get when you're sort of like rounding off these transients with that really aggressive and fast attack. It just makes the whole thing sit like glue better. And so I'm using two tools to do that. you can see them, there we go, we're somewhere behind me. You can see an API 2500 plugin by Waves. I love this plugin. I've used it forever. And I think a lot of people have this plugin. It's pretty inexpensive. And then the other plugin I'm using is external hardware. It's not a plugin. It is, let's see if I can, wait, which way do I go? It is, that. It's my Manly Very side note, I just ordered a desk. All my hardware is going to be like up here now, so you actually be able to see it, and I won't have to do this awkward pointing thing. But I'm using those two things to sort of round off these transients in the mastering, like before we start to go for like final volume and stuff like that. Anyway, let's just get to it. Okay, so here's the song, basically just exactly how it came to me. All the sounds are really good, but for me, the kick and snare are sticking out a little bit more than I'd like them to. And truthfully, a lot of mixing engineers will do this because like it gives someone like myself a little bit more control, and we can see this stuff, right? Let me make this really big. Like we can pop in and, boom, we can see our transients. Like that looks like a snare. This one's more round. That's probably a kick. Yeah, that's actually two kicks. And you can kind of see them. It's like da-bop, right? And the snare is going to have the brighter, sharper transient in most cases. This is what we want to do. This stuff here, this is already compressed. We don't want to like compress this more. It's fine. But what we do want to do is we want to round these guys right here. So this is really easy. I'm going to go with some really, really aggressive settings, but I'm going to use them lightly. So this is fastest attack. Right away, this is going to start rounding stuff here. The tone knob, and this is why I like this compressor specifically, actually. The tone knob makes a big difference here. And when we have this tone knob on loud, it does this cool sort of darkening thing to transients and tucks them in. Love that. And then because this, is still mastering, we're not going to use a real high ratio, right? But this is subtle, 2-to-1 ratio. If you don't know how compressor ratios work, look that up. That should make sense. But that is to say, compressor ratios, as we go further up the chain here and go all the way up to 10 and then infinity, which is effectively a limiter, they become more aggressive sounding. We don't want to do that here. So we're keeping this light. The big settings that are going to make all the difference here is the attack and this loudness. So the other thing we have to consider is like, where do we put the threshold? And so let's put this all the way down. And I kind of want to show you. So this is already kind of good news. I'm already getting just a little bit of needle movement from when we hit the kick and snare, right? Less from the kick and the snare. That's to be expected considering, right? Like the kick is lower than the snare. And kind of think of the threshold line as just like a line that's just coming down onto our signal, right? And we're lowering it as we move this knob up. Imagine like an imaginary line, right? And we're lowering it down. And the things that kind of stick out of our general, we'll call it audio soup here, these things that pop out, also known as transients, are going to get affected as we lower this imaginary line. So the goal here is to make this needle move only when we get a kick or a snare, but not move when we get down here. Now, we don't get to physically see this line, so we're going to use these meters to, check that out. Pretty good. Yeah, I like that. And this probably sounds like really subtle. You got to listen closely. But if I bypass this, just listen to this snare. And now. It's just a little softer, a little rounder. And then I'm going to use the Very which we're not going to be able to see, but I pointed out earlier in the video. This is only doing, I don't know, dB or two. So I'm looking at the meters now. This is doing 1 dB of compression. So this compression, I guess, serial compression that we're doing here is much less about leveling and more about adding character to the audio that we already have. So this is rounding transients, and let's not kid ourselves. If you know anything about the Manley Very it's just like really creamy. Maybe I'll take some iPhone video of it right now so you can kind of see what the needles are doing as I hit play. So this is a really subtle trick that I'll do before I start to include the rest of my mastering chain. I'll just show you just for fun what that sounds like now. I think compression scares a lot of people, but I think if you can kind of visualize it, how I just sort of showed it, it should make a lot of sense. Like, what are we doing? We're very quickly, attenuating things that drop below that sort of invisible line, also known as the threshold that we're talking about. And with certain compressors, and this is why people like different compressors for different things, they have a color, they have a character, right? So in this case, I like the darkening effect that we're going to get on, programmed drum samples. I think it just makes them sit. It makes it feel more like rock and roll. Because a lot of times, right, we're sort of like emulating, rock music, which, let's not kid ourselves, is played like in a room with a drum set, right? But most people don't have the ability to record it that way. So more and more we're seeing drum samples being used. So yeah, that's about it. Start to be making some more content. And yeah, everything's going good. I'm scaling up my mentoring program. So if anybody wants to get better at mixing, mastering, audio production in general, shoot me a DM or shoot me an email at j@jmoss.com, and we can talk about that. I've been having a ton of fun with it, and I've made a ton of changes to my mentoring program too. And it's like, I swear to God, it's like psycho effective now. So that's all. We'll talk soon. See you.